There is an old adage, one that you might have heard from a grandparent or village wise person, the one that says, you get out what you put in, meaning your efforts are matched to some degree by the results or the output. Now take our nonprofit, Pioneer Knowledge Services, who delivers this cool program that you're listening to right now, takes a bunch of effort that you don't even see. We hope that you obtain value from our efforts to deliver it to your powers of reason. Here is where you come in. You, the listeners. Make our efforts rewarded. Consider donating to keep us moving forward. Visit pioneer-ks.org and click on donate. Pioneer Knowledge Services welcomes you to the next Because You Need to Know. I'm your host, Edwin K. Morris. I serve as president and founder of this organization, and we are thrilled to offer this educational program. These design conversations bring you people's experiences from all over the globe in the field of knowledge management, nonprofit work, and innovation.
My name is Vanessa. I live in New York City. I absolutely love working in technology and innovation. I've worked over 25 years in this field. And the thing I get asked a lot is what makes someone successful? The thing I have learned is that growth in an industry plus dumb luck leads to success more than any other factors combined.
Wait a minute. So part of your research is defined by dumb luck.
Yes.
That's what you're saying is a divining rod for success.
That plus growth in an industry. It's true. It's so much of it is about being in the right place at the right time. If I look around me, and I think there have been books written about this too, right? I think Malcolm Gladwell recently wrote about, there's this whole slew of these founders that were born at the right time. You look at Bill Gates, you look at Michael Dell. They were born in this heyday where computing was coming into the foray. So let's talk about growth of an industry. And then they happen to have had the luck, like the lucky breaks that they had, because there were many people working at it so that they could succeed. Of course, it's something I've seen again and again. It's something that I've resigned myself to accept because there are only so many things you can control. And so I love talking about my mentors because I've had the honor and privilege of having some who have been incredibly formative and just transformational for my personal growth and my career. I think back to when I was 14, and that was when I met the late Space Shuttle commander, David Walker. We went on a trip together as part of a NASA student delegation to what was formerly the USSR. He was just an incredible leader. And so he led 10 of us, 10 14-year-old students, to what was then the USSR as part of a diplomatic delegation. But what was so special was that we kept a relationship afterwards. And fax was one of the ways that you would write one another. And I remember there was this one time he saw me winning an award or heard about the news, and he faxed to my parents' fax machine to say, I just want to let you know, I'm just so proud of you. And it just touched me so much. I mean, here's like a man who was like, busy commanding space shuttle missions, saying like, let me just drop Vanessa a note.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. He sadly passed in 2001. His widow, Paige, a few years ago sent me a photo he found of the two of us. She said, like, look at what I found, this photo of the two of you when one of his space shuttle missions was scrubbed. And I had gone down to watch the launch, but unfortunately, the space shuttle mission was scrubbed, but the plus side was that all of the astronauts came out of quarantine, so we were able to hang out together. It's like one of my most treasured possessions. So he's definitely a mentor I think about very often.
Well, I'm glad you decided to bring the mentor in because I think a lot of folks forget what put them where they are. And it's always good to reflect on that and put the honor where it is and where it should be to those that have helped others.
That's right. Because I think that type of giving mentality is actually something I've been trying to do is to pay it forward.
I've read recently what gets you up out of bed every day, and it has something to do with artificial intelligence. Could you tell me something about why that exists?
In terms of why artificial intelligence exists, or why does it get me out of bed?
Why exactly? Some people it's about food or coffee or something, but you're
Well,
like, ooh, artificial intelligence.
I've been thinking, I guess like my whole entire career has been about solving problems that I see around me, or maybe I should say it's like resolving pain points. I think so much about wisdom. I think so much about what people have known. I guess maybe when I was younger, and I remember when I was learning physics was actually one of my favorite subjects, because basically we would adjust things that I would be thinking about when I was younger. Like, why is it that when you're on a train and you drop a ball, that ball is not like far behind you? Why is it like with you? You know, things of that sort would just keep me up at night. Maybe I was just a total nerd growing up. But I just think about the wisdom that people have had for centuries. And so you think about the big philosophers and how they were able to do the work that they did with very little resources around them. And how did they know how to do things? And how can we tap into that and build upon it? Why is it that, like, as humans, we seem to be making the same mistakes over and over again? And so...
So wait a minute now. So what I hear you say is you like puzzles.
Yes.
You like to figure out things.
That's right.
So there's inquisitiveness. Some of it is physics. I understand, because you want to understand why. Why does this do this? Why does it not do that? You pose different questions, and then you try to figure out the answer. But in the world of artificial intelligence, you're expanding that concept.
That's right.
Because now it is beyond your little circle of knowledge. It is global knowledge on call.
That's right. It's global knowledge on call. It's also the ability to build upon that knowledge. And I think about the work that I've done in the past. I spent a decade at McKinsey, the consulting firm. And I remember what I loved most about it, besides the people, of course, just in terms of the day-to-day work, was the fact that you would build upon what other people had done in similar situations. And I just remember thinking like, wow, this is saving so much time. This is turbocharging the thinking. And to be able to do that, it just pushes you in a different dimension. And what if you can rely on technology to help you to do a lot of that work? It democratizes it for many people. It also allows you to make these leaps that would have just been that much harder, to bring things together just that much more quickly, when it would have taken maybe days or weeks to crunch through analyses. For me, I get up in the beginning of the day just thinking like, oh, what types of problems can we solve using this type of technology?
And as we have gone from the thinking machine, the idea that a mechanism can produce results the human cannot, or at least in a way the human cannot. There's a couple things here. So we've advanced beyond the binary yes, no, such a simplistic model, to something so sophisticated. Does it also produce AI philosophy? Is there a philosophical stance of just the AI itself?
AI itself is based on the rules and parameters that humans give it. That's where the topic of ethics, the topic of what inputs are going in, is so important. I mean, I'm thinking a lot about how do you make sure that what is being built is free from bias, free from discrimination, when humans, unfortunately, have those tendencies. I think that's one of the biggest questions to date. When you have this type of technology that could democratize, it could also at the same time make problems even more persistent and dangerous, frankly.
Or twist it. Yeah, twist it and make it even weaponizable AI.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure that exists.
Yes.
People like to spend energy on destruction as much as creation.
That's right.
Just for those that are just catching up now, let's go look at a definition of artificial intelligence. I'm surprised they start with the theory. It's a theory? Is it a theory? I thought it was an actual product. It says the theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence. So facial recognition, visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, translation on the spot. There's a lot of productivity bonuses to this. So where does it sit for you? Let's talk about Sugarworks. Let's talk about where you're parking your wagon in this domain of artificial intelligence, and what does it do?
In terms of what I'm doing in artificial intelligence, I am using AI to help and enable organizations, so companies, to capture tacit institutional knowledge. So if you think about what makes a company tick, what makes a company really distinctive, it's of course like about the people who are there, but also the people who have been there before, building upon that knowledge. But if you think about how much of that knowledge is captured, maybe 15%, 20% is documented. The rest of it is in people's heads. And so the whole notion of how do you get that out so that the whole organization can benefit is something I'm incredibly obsessed with, because I think that that could make organizations go faster. And not just that, when we are in this phase now where baby boomers are retiring in droves, attrition is at an all-time high in companies. You also have, of course, remote and hybrid work, making it very difficult for people to share information. And then there's also the rise of independent contractors. That makes it just that much tougher to share knowledge. And what I'm trying to do is to essentially create a way so that you can capture this knowledge and then summarize it and create outputs using AI.
I understand. I understand about the tacit and the express knowledge, two different things. But in the process of combining artificial intelligence as a game changer for an organization, you're depending on all users to be inquisitive and to find answers in a different way than what they're normally ever did. Right? I mean, you're going to change behaviors.
Behaviors are changing already. I think that if there's like, of course, like everybody says, if there's one constant, there's change, right? That it is change. And in terms of how people do things, I think how people are doing things now, post-pandemic, if you just think about it in organizations, it's just that much harder. Like, where do I go to find X, Y, and Z? How do I find that? Are there better tools out there for me to do it? Or, the people who are most resourceful know that the quickest way is to find the experts in an organization and to try to get out that information. The ones who are not as resourceful don't know.
Let's back this down to prehistoric digital age of what that behavior used to be. And in an organization, either you had a formal mentorship, apprenticeship kind of thing where knowledge was built and shared and developed, and that was usually down a track of a skill, right? Or something of a specialized nature. Now we are in this century, and now we are not so much, in my view, particularly building people with deep knowledge around one skill. We're fostering an ability to adapt, overcome, and connect. So the idea that not long ago in an organization, you would have one person or a few people that were your go-to for answers. Either they had institutional knowledge or experience, and they had all the data. If you were the new person and somebody said, where do call Joe, call Sally, she knows everything. That tacit knowledge was like in a straw, and now you've got tacit knowledge in an idea that is more flat and more available.
We're trying to get it so that it's not just about knowing that it's Sally or Joe that you have to go after. That maybe that there are also these other folks who have this knowledge, but they just never had a chance to share it, is also something that you can tap into. That's essentially part of what we're trying to do, is to say that there are subject matter experts throughout an organization. Some of them are very well known to the org. Actually, some others, their immediate teams might know, but the rest of the organization might not know that.
And personality-wise, not everybody wants the phone to ring to ask them all kinds of questions, right? They're introverts, and they're like, hey, go figure it out yourself. I don't have time for you.
Right. And I think we've all encountered those folks who just know so much. and you're just like, wait a second. What else do you know? And then I think when you find those people, you're just like, wait, I could ask you basically 50 questions and be here all day and just learn so much from what is spewing out.
Yes.
And that's like the gold that we're trying to mine for organizations.
Sugarwork in and of itself is a platform.
Yes, it is. It's a software as a service platform.
And it is one that I presume would combine with whatever you're using. If you're using Google or if you're using Microsoft, whatever that is, it ponies up to whatever you've got, because you've got to be able to touch all the documentation, all the resources.
So we're actually not touching the resources per se, we're touching the people. So we basically get the folks to go in a video meeting, just like the one we're having right now. We send in an AI note taker, which records, transcribes, summarizes the meeting. But if I'm in this type of knowledge sharing session and I'm referring to documents, that is something that we do pull out to say, this document is being referenced, so you should be able to go to that document. But we are integrating into these solutions so that you can drive and get to that document.
Okay. So the deeper knowledge and interconnectedness with the historical perspective is not the first thing you guys are doing. Your first thing you're doing is conversations.
Right. Conversations, but elicited conversations. It's not just about saying we're going to be a fly on the wall in every conversation. These are very structured.
Right. Structured. Got it. All right. So let's talk about that. I guess it would be mission dependent on the customer. I mean, who you talk to and why, right? Because you got to set all these things up. Or does the customer, that's their job. They figure all that out.
Yeah. So the customers then, they come to us to say, this is the type of information we're trying to elicit. And then we help them create those structured discussion guides. Like what we find is that a lot of people don't even know what questions to ask. So that you're driving towards the insights. And it's almost like an art form to be able to ask the big questions like, what would you change if you can wave a magic wand? Walk me through the problems you typically see. Who do you go to when X, Y, and Z happens? What does great look like? That's what we're trying to bring out.
So how do you manufacture the questions? Because you're not going to know every industry.
No, we don't. We definitely don't know every industry. But a lot of the times, what we do find is that lots of these big questions, like, walk me through what your role entails. Walk me through what does success look like in your organization or in your role. That's something that could apply across the board. So I would say maybe about 60 to 70% of the questions are very much standardized across all different functions and roles. And then you get specific to know, well, I know that in this function, X, Y, and Z happens. So let's just use that to say, what happens in this step? What happens in this step?
Well, it sounds like once you have that mechanism and foundation, it would be easy to slide into augmented reality, because what you're saying is that you're in a digital room. You're in a conversation. You're one-on-one or a few on a few, and your discussion, you're trying to elicit this content from an individual. But not all things are derived from a conversation. Sometimes, if you had a augmented reality, then the person could go through the mechanisms. Because if you sit there and ask, how do you do A to Z, they're not doing it. They're trying to remember it. So if you could actually catch them in the process, like NASA or anything like that that's got a process-oriented nature, then you can walk through the actual doing and capture more tacit knowledge.
Right, you can. And I think so much of this is, when are you trying to capture this information? Then just say what you said about NASA. So they have in each location, they have a chief knowledge officer, and they have people who are trained to drive at these types of insights to say, okay, this project, we've reached a milestone. What happened? What was supposed to happen? How can we learn from this going forward? I think those types of learning organizations are incredibly interesting. Most organizations are not like that, though. And so how do you make an organization a learning organization if they haven't been in the first place?
And I want to make a distinction there on the learning organization. Just because you capture doesn't mean you're learning anything, right? So you can build content. We got all, what are you doing with that? Is anybody using that? And I think that's where the integrative piece for me comes in the AI world, is that now for all this stuff, all this content, now you've got AI can help bring you new access points to that content without much labor. And that's where the goodness is, right? But here again, if the behavior of the culture is to never look back, it doesn't mean anything. It's a record. It's a record.
Right.
And in NASA, I understand you got to have records of what happened, who did what, and all that sort of thing. It's more of accountability as much as it is showing innovation. In most organizations, they're moving at 90 miles an hour. Most of the folks, and this is a general statement in all the organizations I've been in, I would say 79.8% of the people never look back. They never look what was under the hood. They don't even look what they did last year.
That's right. No, it's true. It's almost like they finished it, and so we're going to move on.
Yeah, we're moving on.
It's like,
yeah.
moving on. But we're not going to do a retrospective to understand why something happened. Can we improve?
That bothers me because the framework, similar to the United States Army, is you have knowledge management people instead of all the people having a knowledge management capacity. Everybody in the organization had this base understanding of behaviors and why you should care to share, why you should care to do anything in a knowledge handling and development realm. That's everybody's job.
The organizations that look at this, like the leaders who realize that this is going to get you like to 10x every single year, they are the ones who really do believe in this. Like, I've worked with those types of organizations. You have other ones that don't think about this. And then they just basically, back to what I'd said in the beginning, they happen to be in growth industries. So you see them on a rocket ship. And then the moment that growth plateaus, you see them starting to crumble because they didn't have those foundations of what are we doing right that we want to continue? What are the risks in our business so that we can manage that? What can we do so we can prepare for when it's going to be famine instead of a feast condition?
Now, granted, when you're in an industry that's riding the wave of, like technology birth and all those things, that's a whole different level than just starting a popsicle stand at the corner as an entrepreneur, because the difference is that you've got a communal activity in something that's riding the wave. You've got this things just feed off each other in a fast way versus an industry that's kind of plateaued for the last 100 years and they just keep perking along. The idea that tacit knowledge feeds innovation, do you find that as a truism in that most organizations, they want innovation, that's why they want this? Or what's their motivation to even get started?
I think their motivation, and this is what we're seeing now, they don't realize what they have it until it's about to walk out the door.
Yeah.
And it's more about risk mitigation than it is about, hey, this about innovation. This is about, let's make sure that we're not going to get into trouble because this information that has been around for this long time that we've taken for granted is about to go out. So if you take Boeing, for example, and what has been happening to them over the last 5-6 years, the issue is that they lost a lot of senior experienced engineers in their midst during the pandemic. And then now you have a lot of, lack of a better word, rookies who are building planes and who just don't have that experience of, this is a problem that typically happens and this is what we need to do. If they were to go back in time to say, what could we have done to harness that knowledge before we walked out the door, I'm sure they would pay quite large sums to avoid the mistakes that they've made since.
So you're talking about mitigating risk, but not everybody gets that knowledge is a mitigator.
That's right. I don't think that people realize it unless they happen to be in industries that are just like, wait, this is like where I feel the pain. Like if you talk to the business leaders who are leading their teams, they see it again and again. They see it like whenever somebody who is really critical leaves the team, you feel that vacuum.
Right.
And you're just like, how am I going to fill this out? I know this is going to set us back. If you multiply that across an organization, then you start seeing like you're going to start getting in trouble. The question is more about who is responsible then for trying to correct that within an organization. I think that's hard because whose neck is going to be on the line, really? Of course, it's going to be the leadership, like the C-suite, the ones who are really thinking about it. They want to do something about it, but they just don't even know what tools are out there in their midst.
You come to a fine point that I think most organizations skip over is that you've got dedication at the C-suite level that is around either operations, finances, sales, marketing. You got all these folks that are at certain levels, but there's no definition of who owns the accountability of knowledge. And if you don't have a CKO or a cognition officer, this was a recent show that we came up with a new job.
Cognition officer.
If you had a cognition officer, yes, because it's more than just knowledge. Yeah. It's behaviors, it's learning, it's sharing, it's all those things that I have always felt fell into HR. I mean, those are all HR responsibilities. making sure they're hiring people that practice the right things the organization is committed to. But, in this regard, it is tough to sell a solution if there's nothing to back it up in the organization anyway. So how do you walk that fine line?
Well, that's why we are now talking to companies when they're going through change. And when they're going through change, they are thinking about these things.
Yeah.
The moment you go in, you're like, wait a second, this is what you should do. And then once you get in there, they start saying, well, why don't we do this all the time? Like, why don't you?
Yeah, good question.
Why don't you?
Yeah.
And so maybe you should think about the transformation at a deeper level.
So where's your sweet spot for a targeted audience or targeted client? Is it a big that's going through transformation? Are you looking at smalls? And you're an entrepreneur, apparently genetically. So, really, you're right. All organizations should be doing this, but not all organizations will ever do it.
Right. We're looking at companies that are large enough where, of course, like the larger the organization, the more complex, and where you just don't even know where this information lies. But if you know that in those industries, there's going to be change, there's going to be workforce transitions because there are now large numbers retiring. Think about our government, for instance. I think I heard a stat that the Internal Revenue Service has estimated that in the next 3 to 5 years, maybe about 45% of people working at the IRS are going to be retiring. That is an incredibly high number if you think about it.
It is.
And you think about all these other industries, you look at telecom, utilities, you look oil and gas, you look at insurance. These are industries where that type of subject matter expertise is projected to walk out the door. So that's what we're trying to capture, because we know that for the longest time, companies haven't had to think about this, but now they're going to have to.
Well, they think about it the wrong times or the wrong ways. The exit interview was always the minimal effort to do something, and I've never seen it actually pay much.
No.
The wisdom and knowledge that is valuable to an organization is a variable that changes with time. What's valuable 5 years ago may not even be relevant now. As you compile tacit knowledge warehouse of beneficial items, you hope, for the organization it serves, who's going to start shoveling stuff out the door when that knowledge is no longer relevant?
Right. Well, I think this means that there needs to be continuous knowledge gathering and outputs for organizations to think about, what does that mean? Also about being able to deliver information at the moments when people need it, like documents upon documents upon documents. That's not going to be helpful for anyone. But if you can embed this information into tools that people are using already, if there's a way to then acknowledge, like, oh, this is something that you're looking for, why don't we just do a search for you of whether or not someone has encountered this before? And that is incredibly helpful. That is, I think, the holy grail that a lot of technology companies are thinking about, which is, how do we deliver this critical information to you at the moment that you need it the most?
And as industry has always seemed to steer human behavior, what is the expectation at the home, at the ranch? How is this going to change how we act at home?
If you look at what's been happening over the last couple of decades, people are very interested to know, where are they from? Who are they related to? So that's why these genealogy companies are doing quite well. And I remember also during the pandemic, I had my parents go onto this site called Storyworth, where every week they would be fed a different question. And so they would have to write their answer about something that happened in their childhood, something so that you can bind the story of their lives together. And I think people are starting to realize that stories for their personal lives are just as important in the professional workplace as well.
All right. So I like what you're saying, because it sounds like the strength, and this is my words, the strength of a society is built on its stories or its ability to connect.
Right.
So what you're doing with Sugarworks is building a stronger societal element in an organization. So as a Microsoft guy, we have Copilot as our beneficial thing. And so what I decided, audience, was to ask, what is cool about Vanessa Liu?
What
is it pronounced Liu?
Liu.
Liu?
Yeah.
Liu. So I've asked Copilot, what is cool about Vanessa Liu? And you want to know what the answer is? Vanessa Liu has a fascinating and diverse career that makes her stand out. Here are some cool things about her. Entrepreneurial spirit, paragraph. Tech and innovation, paragraph. Media and strategy, paragraph. Leadership and mentorship, paragraph. Global perspective. So I'm going to read that one. Global perspective. Vanessa's career has taken her around the world, from consulting at McKinsey Company to working in Amsterdam, London, and New York. Her ability to pivot across different industries and roles while maintaining a focus on innovation and impact is truly inspiring. The cool thing with that, and I want to demonstrate Copilot, is that that's what's cool about AI, right? It gives you, and I just learned this, let me share this. I attended a grant making or grant software as a nonprofit, always looking for money, a grant software using AI. They said, I didn't know this, but you can tell AI to be active in a role, and then you give it a situation, and it will give you answers based on the role you said to act like. I was like, wow, that's something.
Yeah.
So in the instance, in this example, it said, hey, AI, you are the grant reviewer for a large foundation. Please review the following document and tell me, blah, blah, blah. And it did. And it was like, I don't know how valuable or valid the content was, but it's a start. It's an absolute starter. In our nonprofit,
Right.
It has become an extra person because it gives you a different perspective. It may not be 100% accurate, but at least it's a start.
It's a start. It's a start so that because blank pieces of paper, blank slates are very hard to work with. Even if something is wrong, and actually, it's great to hear that Microsoft Copilot is so accurate, probably because of the fact that LinkedIn is one of is one of their companies, right? There's something to work with. And I think that is what makes it that much easier. And if I also think about how we are taking the approach of how do you get knowledge out? Well, if you ask an expert, hey, could you share what you know?
Yeah.
They don't even know where to start. So let's just make this easier for you. Or if we,
That's a great comparison to the blank paper, because it's like, what do you want to know? So you got to have that first lead in to help build the rapport. But I want to example this because now if you've got internalized knowledge and you can use AI to start building and answering questions like this, hey, if we wanted to increase our sales by 10%, what would we do based on our internal content already? Or start to that, like really having I hate to say advisor, but kind of a oracle, your own business in order to help give you deeper understanding.
That is what people should be looking at this as, that it is a way so that you can get a boost. It should not replace the work that you're doing. This should make you that much more productive. Just like when the calculator came out, or when the computers first became much more ubiquitous. Mm-hmm. And there was just such a fear that, wait a second, this means that we don't have to work in the way that we used to. And that is something that I hear again and again, so many people being very worried, like, oh, AI is going to take away our jobs. Or is it more AI is going to enable us to do more things so that will free up our time so that we could do more value-added things. Things like I can now spend time really building the rapport with my team members, or I can really just understand all sides of this issue. If I think about the legal profession, which is, of course, one of the industries being most disrupted, how do I make that better? And how do I find a solution better? So it's not just about looking for the comma in the right place, right? There's that type of thinking time. What do you do with that?
I'm going to summarize everything that we've just talked about. So this is a transformational agent to advance operational capacity is what AI is. And that organization can be anything, to a civic unit, to a Girl Scout troop, whatever. I mean, it doesn't have to be formal, and it doesn't have to be for profit.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So where's your impact? You talk a lot about impact. So what impact is your design and target to do with Sugarwork?
So my desire is that this type of information is going to enable companies to remain competitive so that they can continue to grow, so that they continue to do the things that they are doing to bring out new products, bring out new services. Really, where Sugarwork came from is the fact that I'm seeing a generation of wisdom walking out the door. If you look at the baby boomers who are now leaving, and they have decades of experience, and our society is one where The moment people leave and are out of the picture, it's almost like, oh, so-and-so was never around. That knowledge was never around. I want people to be able to build off of ideas. I want people to solve more problems. And I feel like, especially in this day and age where we have so many issues, having that wisdom loop so that you can glue generations together, you have that intergenerational type of respect. That's what I'm thinking a lot about.
All of that hinges on an organization that believes knowledge is an asset.
Yes. I've encountered other organizations where they're just like, actually, we don't want that knowledge anymore. We want to get rid of it. I'm like, oh, okay. And you'll always have those outliers.
What is the hardest no you've gotten on a sale to Sugarwork, and why?
I think the hardest no has come from people not realizing that it's tacit knowledge that's going to be most important. They just think like, well, if I just take a recording of how people do things on their screens, I'm getting the same knowledge. I'm like, no, that means that you don't really understand the knowledge that's in your midst. That's the toughest no, where philosophically we're thinking about fundamentally different things.
Is there a convincing of that, or do you just say, okay, good luck?
Basically, I just say, okay, let's regroup in a few months. Let's touch base. Let's see.
Maybe the leadership will change, or something will change, and then they'll be like, what? Oh, yeah, exactly. We love that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So does it come down to leadership, or is it the culture? Is it leadership that's the hard yes, no, or the culture is like, yeah, we're not doing it?
I think like it comes from leaders, very convincing leaders, like basically just very forward thinking, can drive that cultural change. And so that's why for us, we talk to the leaders at the top.
All right. Well, my friend, everybody wants to know what you think knowledge management is.
Ooh. So the way that I see it is that you are harnessing the wisdom within an organization and you're making it available to others and having a system for doing that.
That's sweet and to the point, and it gets to the form and function of why. Any last words of Vanessa wisdom to pass on to the listeners?
I don't know if I have that much wisdom, but
It's your golden moment, tacit woman. Come on, let's go.
For me, just asking the why, always asking the why will get you to some incredible answers. I think 3-year-olds have it. They're 3-year-olds, like they always say, why?
So like, the why behavior, it's funny you bring that up. So the childlike behavior of being inquisitive and wanting to know and not knowing anything, right? You got to start somewhere.
It's like,
there is a behavioral switch that I think happens in most humans that gets shut down, right? That why questioning gets shut down by people, environments, communities, and a dog that barks like crazy. So this idea of the child being, because not everybody makes it out of childhood to adulthood still asking why, right? Something is switched in their mode of behavior. This I like because you also want to create inquisitive people to gain tacit knowledge. And I think one of the benefits of producing tacit knowledge is then people say, oh, I didn't know that. Once they start to see the value of the effort, then it's like, I get that. So that childlike behavior has to be reignited. So there should be a little summary test that you've got devised that says, are you an inquisitor? Do you inquire? Do you have questions all the time because you want to know stuff? Or are you just like, I'm good. I know enough. I'm good.
It almost like applies to our society nowadays. We are not asking enough of why. Why do people think a certain way? Why do they have ingrained perceptions or beliefs? If we were to try to truly understand instead of assuming, then I think that we'd be in a much better place.
Well, it sounds like you've got a fix for everything.
No, I don't. I just have questions for everything.
I think it's a Zen thing. I forget which philosophy that this is applicable to, but the wisest person never has the answer, but just a better question.
That's true.
You know? And that's what you're getting to. Thank you, Vanessa. It was a pleasure to speak with you. All the best with you in this endeavor of Sugarwork.
Thank you so much, Edwin.
Thank you for joining this extraordinary journey, and we hope the experiences gained add value to you and yours. See you next time had because you need to know. If you'd like to contact us, please email byntk@pioneer-ks.org or find us on LinkedIn.